So today we're going to take a look at a passage. It will be on the screen, but I recognize that this TV is maybe only two people can see it right now, but we're trying. If any of you want to drop a big check, we could buy one that could make it all work out here, but maybe you left your checkbook at home. So my plan was to each week over the next several weeks to take a look at Easter characters between Easter Sunday and Pentecost, and just look at them kind of deeply because there are some great stories. And then I was reading this passage today, and this is what I'm talking about today. That Easter Sunday evening, the broader community of followers, not just the 11. Now, the reason these things are in brackets, if you look at this, if you read it in your own Bible and New Living Translation, you'll see it doesn't say Easter. I'm telling you, it's Easter Sunday. And it just says that Easter Sunday, the disciples. But in the Gospel of John, in this particular reference, they're not talking about the 11. They're talking about the broader group. So could be many dozens of people in this upper room. We're meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Why? Because Jesus just got killed. And they're not aware yet of what's happened on that Easter morning. They've heard rumors, but they're just not sure. They're not buying it. So the doors are locked. They're inside, keeping quiet. And suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them, which breaks the laws of nature if you're paying attention. Very odd. Peace be with you, he said. And as he spoke, he showed them the wounds in his hands and his side. They were filled with joy when they saw the Lord. Again, he said, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. Then he breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven. My intention was today to cover those 5 verses that I just read with you. And we'd be all wrapped up and on our way. But the more I sat with the text and the more I learned about it, the more I reflected on it, the more I prayed about it, I changed my mind. We're going to spend 4 weeks on 5 verses because there's so much here. And today we're simply talking about peace be with you. Peace be with you, which, just to let you know, peace is a big deal in the Bible. In Hebrew, it's shalom. You've heard us do that. We talked a lot about that in the fall, that the nature of God is shalom, and pursue shalom with shalom. So the character, the ethos of God is shalom itself, as this God is trying to bring more shalom, which is this peace, this wholeness, this well-being to everybody everywhere, including the planet. That's part of what we're supposed to be doing, is taking care of the earth we call home. That's part of shalom, harmony throughout. Equitable, equal, all of these things. In the Greek translation, it's eirene. Can you say eirene? All right, now, I know it's Greek, but let's be Italian on it. So I want you to be Italian, get your hands up like this, say eirene. That was terrible. Try that again. Eirene. Very good. If Sal Nuccio happens to be watching, this is for you, Sal. Eirene. All right. It's peace. And peace shows up all throughout the Bible as this wonderful thing. And yet peace sometimes eludes us. That's what we're talking about today. But before we do, I want you to turn to somebody kind of near you and blurt out, because it's hard to hear with masks and everything. Over the past year, we've been restricted from where we've been able to go, traveling to here or there. And I'm wondering if you can think of one place or space that was really hard for you not to be, and just say that to somebody around you. All right, so just out of curiosity, somebody bark something out. Family, right. How many times I heard I can't go hug my grandkids and how hard that was. Yeah. Anybody else? Tahoe, right. Yeah, right. Anybody else? Church. Good answer, Liz. Good answer. Extra points for you. Anybody else? The beach. Yeah, right. Remember when it was closed for a while? You couldn't even get there? It was awful. Right. My daughter, we drove to the beach just because she wanted to see it on her birthday. The best we could do. Anybody else? Vallejo? Did somebody say Vallejo? That doesn't make any sense. Well, I guess not. Friends. Yes, right. Couldn't have friends over, couldn't go over and be with it unless you made them your bubble. And the problem with making them in your bubble is then you're stuck with them, for a period of time. That couldn't be too good. Everything was virtual in the last year. We got really comfortable with it. And if we'd have known a year ago to invest in Zoom, we'd all be incredibly wealthy. And there's another piece of technology that's kind of been around for a long time. It's not really technology. It's a gadget, if you will, that's been in broadcasting for a long time. It's called a green screen, right? So once I figured out that we were going to be doing this together for a long time, I picked this up because I knew I'd be recording in my house. And I wanted it to do whatever I wanted it to do. Because if you have one of these babies behind you, you can drop any backdrop from anywhere in the world that you want to be. So most of you thought that I was maybe leading church every week from my office or the sanctuary, because that's what the picture showed. Whenever I lead stuff for either church or for community faith groups, most of the time I'm in my office. At least it looks like I'm in my office. But sometimes I'm at Bodega Bay because I can be, just like that. Sometimes I'm at Yosemite because I love that. Sometimes I'm at my favorite reservoir up in the High Sierra. That's right. I do have a bathroom shot just to throw people off. Where it makes people do a double take right away because it's just a photo of my downstairs bathroom, and if I'm positioned just over the toilet, people aren't quite sure if I forgot to stop my video. It's pretty fun. Well, these are really handy because you can virtually make people think you're somewhere where you're not. Who wants to look at my closet door at my house when you could look at all those places that I talked about? The disciples that day didn't have a green screen, however. They couldn't make it.
It didn't connect.
Because in that upper room, they were in terror.
Wonder why
real terror.
I guess that works better for Zoom.
And more than terror, they were absolutely heartbroken. Can you imagine the enormity of emotions that they were experiencing that day?
Wow.
They lost their leader who they loved, who they thought was going to change the world. They were hiding for their lives. Whatever future plans they had were shot. I mean, the complexity of their emotions that day, we kind of know a little bit about now because of what we've been through collectively all over the world. And the crazy thing to me is that Jesus shows up in this very mysterious way. And by the way, the Gospel of John has no interest in explaining how that's possible. So too bad. But it also reminds us that John's not really interested in that. That John is just simply saying the disciples were hanging out, the followers were hanging out, and all of a sudden, somehow they experienced Christ right there with them. The presence of God that they had come so closely to identify in the person of Jesus now was right there with them. And it's interesting that he says it twice. Peace be with you is a normal greeting that you would say back in the day. You see it a lot. But I think in this context, I think it carries so much more weight. I think it's almost prophetic on Jesus' part. I think it's saying what is true to the people in that room right then and there, no matter what they're going through, because there's no green screen, there's no virtual reality. All they have is reality, and it sucks. And now they got to figure out what to do with it. And Jesus dares to come into that and says to them, peace be with you. And then he shows them his hands and his side. It's like this is the kind of thing they needed to see to connect the dots. And they start to realize, we don't understand this, but we're experiencing this thing together. And they become joyful even in their place of terror. And Jesus repeats again, peace be with you. I'm wondering what your actual reality is like today, how you're feeling. If you've taken time to reflect on how you are, wonder what your complexity of emotions are as you've lived through this year. I pushed that really hard in March, if you're watching it all, because I think we need to see it, name it, and grieve it in order to really capitalize on all the gifts that the last year offers us. But I wonder how you're doing in light of that. I wonder what your peace quotient is. I wonder if you're experiencing the peace that passes understanding, a peace that the world cannot give. Well, that leads me to talk about, I do have an outline of things that we're going to go over today. Not that it will help many of you because you can't see it too well, but that leads me to a sob story. So I want to talk about a sob story. My very first car in life, when I turned 16 in Michigan, actually I bought it when I was 15 and a half, was a 1975 Sob 99 because I thought it looked cool. Now, the context of me buying a 1975 Sob 99 was this. My dad, I had a very part-time job at a shoe store in the local mall, stocking shoes and stuff. And you don't make a whole lot, stocking shoes after school. But it was the only income that I had. And so I talked to my dad, and there was absolutely no way I could buy a car on my own. So he was going to have to float me some cash, and I'd have to pay him back. That's how I grew up, and that's how I raised our kids. And anyway, so he gave me a budget of $500. And so I started looking through the ads for cars that you could get for $500 or less. And that was the coolest car I could find, in that little nickel trader thing that was floating around. So I went to look at this thing, and remind you, this is in Michigan, where they use salt on the roads for 8 months of the year to take care of ice. And that means that every single car in Michigan is filled with rust. But my Sob was beautiful if you looked at it right from the front. If you looked at any other direction, it was terrible. But right from the front, it was really special. This car, I got to tell you, it was the biggest piece of junk. You remember that show on public radio called Click and Clack? Any of you watched that? It was this car talk show. And you'd call in and people would tell them their problems with their car, and Click and Clack, these brothers who owned an auto repair place, they would take their best guess on what was wrong with it. And anytime they had somebody who called in with a problem with their 1975 Sob 99, they'd say, I have a 1975 Sob 99. And both of them at the same time would say, we're sorry, because that's what this car was. Turns out, the guy who sold this to me did not tell me that was the worst year and worst model of Sob ever built by the company. It was terrible, terrible when I got behind, but I was so excited. And my dad was excited because they only wanted $400. So he's like, okay, son, well done. So I took it for a test drive. It was a stick shift. I couldn't drive a stick very well, and it really showed. And luckily, it was a short drive. But I noticed while I was doing my little test drive that, boy, it didn't seem to drive straight. And it wanted to pull to the right pretty significantly. And if we were on a dirt road, it wasn't that big of a deal. But I noticed that as soon as we hit a paved road, it sounded like somebody was taking a corner too fast, but all the time. You know what I mean? Kind of that rolling of the tires. It's because my car was out of alignment. And I had a decision to make early on in my car ownership to either take care of the alignment of my car, or I was going to spend a lot of money replacing that front right tire again and again and again. That's my Sob story. Now let me tell you another Sob story. And I'm going to risk something with you a little bit today, because most of the time when I do this, it backfires. Most people and their relationship with their pastor, they want their pastor to be accessible, to be professional, to be good at what they do, to be good at caring, study, preaching, et cetera, et cetera. But there's one thing that a lot of people, they never say this out loud, and certainly you wouldn't, because crosswalk isn't a class by itself, of course. But a lot of people don't really want their pastors to be human. And so I want to tell you my sob story and what it has to do with peace. So I entered in the pandemic on fumes already. And I entered on fumes because I was working my butt off, because I thought I was going to have a sabbatical start last May. That was going to be a 3-month break to restore and to refresh and to learn and reflect so that I could be healthy for you as a pastor for the next 10 or so years. And that was after 20 years of doing all that we've done together here. I was exhausted. And so when it became clear that things were going to change in a hurry, and this was going to be hard for everybody, including me, I did what I'm wired to do, which is to perform. That's my personality type. I perform. And if you're Jungian and thinking about psychological types, I'm the star guy. I'm the one that I will just do what I need to do. And I even remember saying that out loud to the board because they were feeling bad for me back then. It was like, oh man, you were going to take this thing and that's got to be really tough. And I said, it's tough, but I will perform. And I did. And I have. But I've been through the same stuff as you. The unknown. Been through the stress of what COVID has meant for everybody. Had to be strong for everybody, for the church. So delighted to serve with our local COAD, Community Organizations Active in Disaster. And, because of COVID in part, our interfaith group, which was already going really good. But I think you'd agree with me, Waco, it is so much richer now. It's because we meet together so regularly. And I got to be a part of that, which is beautiful and wonderful. But it required an extra 2 days of work for me every week for the first 3 months, April through June. And then things slowed down. So it was more like an extra day a week. And to do what we did to put Crosswalk online every week required a full extra day of work for me to produce what we did. Because you can't wait until the end. You have to have it produced and ready midweek. That's work. Meantime, my kids, their lives were interrupted as well. They had to come home, and I wanted to be a strong dad for them. My wife lost her job, which was really hard for really, partly because, worry about some income insecurity kinds of things, which didn't end up being really that big of a problem, but much more, she really loved her job. And she really loved the people that she worked with. And it just felt like a blow. A great loss, because it was. I need to be strong for her. So I was, and I did. But over time, I made a grave error. And the grave error that I made was I didn't mind myself. I didn't take care of myself the way I know I needed to. When I would lead the conversation with our faith group, I remember even saying multiple times throughout the years, we would hear from other faith leaders talking about just being exhausted and how they were surprised that they were overcome with different things and they were napping more and all of this. And I remember all of us reminding each other, well, we're in this COVID thing. Nobody's 100%. Nobody has it all together. You got to take it easy on yourself. You got to make sure you're doing good self-care. Jesus, on one of his occasions when he was teaching, he was talking about the Pharisees. And he said, these Pharisees, they know what they're talking about. So listen to them, but don't do what they're doing. Because they're not practicing what they preach. I didn't practice what I preach, because I think it's really important for pastors to have self-care. See, my friend Matt here, pastor colleague from American Canyon, and you can say it out loud that is something that is true of me. That's what I do. And yet I blew it, and didn't know just where I was, and didn't know what it was doing to me until I realized the peace was not there. It shocked me. It shocked me. Easter Sunday, man, we've all been looking forward to coming back and being together. And I was excited about all of that and getting everybody. It was a lot of work for sure. And after Easter Sunday, which went so well and everybody felt so safe and all that, on any other Easter Sunday in my life, I would have gone home rejoicing on cloud nine. I got to see the people that I love. We got to be together again, especially after all this. But all night Sunday, and Lynn and I got away for an overnight, which she bought for me my birthday last June. We were finally able to cash it in, got away to Sausalito. That's how I know about the place. And I told Lynn Monday morning, I'm dead. I'm dead. I can't feel, I don't feel anything. I can't think of anything that I want to do. Things that I knew I love to do, they don't really sound that interesting to me. It's toast. Just toast. Last time I felt this way was about 18 years ago, after things were especially hard here at Crosswalk. The first 4 years here were absolute hell. Absolute hell. Partly because I was really immature and just did a whole lot of stuff that ticked a lot of people off. Some of you remember those days. But after a few years of that, I went to a counselor because I just felt so spent. And I've never experienced not feeling anything before. And that's kind of where I've been the last couple of weeks. Last week after church, same thing, great time together. And yet immediately afterward, just can't quite explain it. It's not a physical condition, and yet I felt it physically right here. Just heavy. Kind of like you feel when you're in deep grief. You know what I mean? Or deep sadness. I hope that doesn't disappoint you. And I'm sorry that I didn't practice what I preach, because I know I told you the same thing, to take care of yourselves. And I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't making sure that I had regular time away to clear my head, to breathe deep, to be in creation, to allow God to just restore me. The first 3 months I couldn't, because there was literally no time. The crappy thing about being under stress for a long time is even when time frees up for when you could do something, you really can't, because your mind can't get to it. I was so jealous of some friends who all of a sudden had all the time in the world, and they're catching up on podcasts and reading books and all that. And I'm like, grr. I would really love to listen to those too. But when you are in this space, you can't, because the white noise in your head is so loud. Nothing can get through. Nothing will stick. And my wife knows it and knew it. So, not you, of course, but some of you might know somebody who might hear my sob story and say, Pete, come on, man, suck it up. Suck it up. I mean, what you're telling me is that work was really hard for you in the last year, and that nobody in your family got sick from COVID, including you. And your wife lost her job, but it turned out okay. And your kids were at home with you, so they were safe. And your wife was at home with you, and everybody was safe, and you're healthy. And the church is still actually doing great and going forward with great strength. Boo-hoo, Pete. Suck it up. It's not like you lost your house or your spouse or a little brown mouse, you louse, because we know Dr. Seuss hates on Pastor Pete regularly, right? I didn't lose a house or a spouse or a mouse. So am I a louse because of this? And if you know somebody who talks like that, who just kind of wants to get to suck it up and deal with it, life's hard for everybody. I have a word for you. And my word for you is this, that I beat you to it. Because I said those words to myself every day. Every day. And my purpose in doing it was to appreciate the good that I do have and celebrate and love and so appreciate. And gratitude journals and thanking God, those are so important and critical. But I also learned something, that when we dismiss our own struggle and our own pain, it contributes to the pain. It deepens the pain. It makes it less likely that you're going to do something about the pain. It is not redemptive to say, suck it up to myself. It is not restorative in any way to say, suck it up to myself. In fact, in short, when I say suck it up to myself, the only thing it does is suck. It sucks. It sucks motivation. It sucks life out of those who are hearing it. And I say that because sometimes I have been the one in a very callous way thinking about whoever. I probably wouldn't say it out loud to anybody because I'm a pastor. I shouldn't do such things. But I'm sure in my life I've had that thought of just saying, suck it up, man, suck it up. And you know what? There is a time for KCCO. There's a time for keep calm and carry on. There's a time for soldier on. There's a time for have a stiff upper lip because you got to get through it. And I did. But there is a time when you have to stop or you will die. So started talking to a counselor that specializes in pastors. He's like known throughout North America for his work. And taking some inventories, read a book and all this stuff. And so I want to tell you, what do you do with this? Because maybe you can learn from my mistake. Maybe there's something you can gather from where I've been. I'm a cautionary tale for you today. And maybe there are some things that you could make sure you're doing in your life now so you don't get to where I am today. And those have to do with some how-to things. Because I am confident that I will get back to that peace. And you know why I'm confident I'm going to get back to that peace? 2 reasons. 1, the peace is a constant. The peace is a constant. The peace of God, the presence of God, the shalom of God, it is all the time, everywhere, constantly. It cannot go away. It is just always present. It's like the love of God. I've used it that way. I've talked about it as the grace of God. These things are connected. Whatever we think about who God is, that thing, that presence, that spirit, that reality is always, all the time available and present, should we have it. And so I'm confident that it is there to get back to, that there is a there, that there is a reality to hope for. And the other reason I'm confident that I will get back to that peace is because I've been here before. And not just 18 years ago, but every so often, every season or so, when I've chosen not to do self-care the way I should. And what happens in that is God does not pull away. That is impossible for that to happen. That's a constant. But I pull away. I stop listening. I stop slowing. I stop being aware. I stop breathing. I stop listening. And that's what I know I got to do. And so you may see me pull back in some ways for a time because I need to, because I'm going to take that sabbatical a year from now. And I want to get to that point, and I want to be good for you, and I want to be good for me, healthy for me. And I want to be a fully actualized, realized, growing, healthy human being, because that's what we all can be. But I know that it is going to require that work from me that nobody else can do. It's not an earning anything. It's just a minding the fact that there are some things that I did not do well, and it caught up with me. And I got to change it for my own life and for you. And I will. The reason I said this was a risk, many years ago, maybe 12 years ago or so, I was in a similar place, and I was exasperated. And I remember sitting in a board meeting right in there when it was a boardroom, and kind of pouring my heart out with the board and just saying, man, I'm probably gonna be all right, but man, I am maxed out. And the board's response at that time was deafening silence. And it taught me to shut up. It taught me that they don't want me to be human. And so I'm telling you this today so that it is absolutely clear to you. I am human. And something's got to give. And I'm going to do what I've got to do for me, for my wife who suffers first, for my kids who suffer second, and for you who suffer last. My wife is the first one who knows when Pete has left the building. I feel terrible about that because she deserves more. I remember where I was going. Oh, yeah. So there's a story about King Edward VII, 100 years ago or more. And he and his queen, his wife, were out walking in the countryside. And it was very late afternoon. And she missed a pothole or gopher hole or whatever, and she twisted her ankle really badly. And they're limping along. There's nobody around. I didn't think that ever happened, but apparently there's nobody around. And so she's just leaning on him, and they're doing the best they can, but they know they need help. And so they find this very meager, farmhouse type place, and the door's shut, of course. It's now dusk. It's getting dark, but they have to take a shot. They see smoke coming out of the chimney. So the king knocks on the door, and a voice from inside says, "Who is it?" And he says, "I'm King Edward VIII. I'm your king. Let me in." And the voice from inside says, "Ha! You're no king. Stop your pranks and move on." Except they did it in a British accent. And so the king, who's never been treated like this before, knocks on the door louder. And the voice inside says, "What do you want?" He says, "I'm telling you, I am your king, Edward VII. Let me in." And the voice from inside is mad. He's like, "I'll show you who's going to be let in. You're going to see just how much I feel about this." And he opens the door to find his king and immediately apologizes all over himself and wonders if he's going to literally keep his head, for another day. And the king comes in with the queen, and they get some help, and all goes on. And the story is told that this man who opened the door to the king in his retirement would sit on his porch in his rocking chair and recount the story of when he let the King of England into his home. And he raises the question again and again and again. What if I wouldn't have let him in? Can you imagine? I almost didn't let him in. There's this passage of scripture, the end of the Bible, where it says, it's a metaphor, it's a picture. It's picturing Jesus. It says, I stand at the door and knock. And anyone who opens the door, I will come in and have rest with him. Peace together. I think there are things that only God can do. I think the peace of God is bigger than me. Something I can't conjure. I've experienced before. It really is beyond understanding how powerful it is and profound it is and healing it is. But I know there's one thing that God cannot do, and that is my part. And that's what I'm going to do. And I hope that you will too. So if you would, let's spend a moment of quiet together. Let you sort out where you are, because this doesn't exist anymore. And I'm wondering, where are you? Virtual is gone. Where are you? What is your peace quotient? Do you realize the spirit of peace is everywhere all the time? Do you realize there is a knock at the door? That there are things to add into your life that you will experience that peace even if you're going through hell? And will you open the door? Let's pray together. So again, just take a moment and breathe, listen. Listen for the Spirit's nudge. What do you need to hear today? What are you being called to? Is there any prayer you can utter to God today in response to how the Spirit has moved with us this morning? Christ is here, my friends. Christ is bigger than one person. Christ means anointing, or the anointed one. The Spirit is that anointing. The presence of God, the Spirit, our ground of being, that holy other, is here now, inviting you, wooing you, encouraging you to come and rest, to open the door to the peace that passes understanding. God, help us. God, help us. God, in a world that does not value mental and emotional well-being, God, help us see it. And God, help us do something about it. Get the help we need. Put the things back in place that we've let go of, that we might be fully yours, fully ourselves, fully human, and fully at peace. To that end, if you know it, say the prayer out with me that Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive the trespasses of those upon us. And lead us not into temptation, there it is, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. I told you I was human.